The Harlem Hellfighters was a regiment of New York National Guardsmen in the First World War. They were set up to fail by their own government. They were humiliated, degraded, eventually given to the French army as a throwaway, and they ended up coming home as one of the most decorated units in the entire U.S. Army.
The Harlem Hellfighters are one of the most important regiments in American history. In World War I, they helped to establish to the entire world the power of black soldiers in the military.
It was very difficult at that time for African Americans to get into the United States military because there was this perception that African Americans would not do well in battle. They had to overcome the prejudice of their own countrymen and yet also perform ably on the battlefield.
Like so many units of African American descent, when they go overseas, they're not sure what they're going to do. Are they going to fight as infantry? Or are they going to be stevedores and load ships? Or are they going to be labor units and cut wood?
And so they're committed to labor duty, they're unloading ships, building the trains, those type of support services. And as you can imagine, these men have been trained and they're willing to fight, they're ready to fight, and this is stressful for them.
They were finally given to the French army, which in a way was an even greater insult, because in the First World War, when the United States entered, General Pershing, the commanding officer, was very clear that American forces would not be fed piecemeal into the French and British army, because the French and British wanted reinforcements, and Pershing said absolutely not. When Americans join this war, they will fight as an American force under an American flag led by an American general. ... except for the black guys. You can have them.
Henry Johnson is perhaps one of the most remarkable black military heroes in U.S. history.
And he found himself in no man's land with Private Needham Roberts manning a listening post.
And Needham Roberts hears click, click, click. And he realizes somebody's cutting the wire. It's potentially a German raid.
And so Roberts is passing him grenades, and they line up these grenades, and the Germans actually do come across the lines. Roberts is hurt, and now Henry Johnson is left to defend their position and to stave off this attack. And then he makes the mistake of jamming a French cartridge into his American gun, and it no longer will work. And the Germans are on top of it.
He then used his rifle like a club, and then he ended up fighting with a knife against the Kaiser's best and turned them.
He's wounded in the fray. He's struck, for example, in the foot, and has a debilitating injury as a result. And he fights them off, he says, for what seemed like an hour.
The Germans ran shrieking into the night, all because of one man.
It's not until the next morning that people realize what a tremendous act this was. They discover 4 bodies of dead German soldiers. And they also realize from the equipment and other things that are left behind that as many as 30 may have been involved in this altercation.
As soon as he drove off those Germans, the French awarded him with the Croix de Guerre, a great honor. Unfortunately, it took about 75 years for the U.S. government to give him the Legion of Merit. Had he been white, he would have walked out of that war with the Medal of Honor. What was so shocking to me when I began to research the story of the Hellfighters was that after they had performed so magnificently in combat, the United States government actually sent a memorandum to the French government, essentially implementing Jim Crow, essentially saying, don't give them some notion that they are equals, because we don't want them taking that notion back to the United States and demanding equality.
When they come back to the United States, he's not awarded the Purple Heart. There's no notation in his military record of his injury. And so he winds up not being able to work because of this injury. He doesn't get any kind of assistance from the army or from the government as a result. And he ends up dying in 1929 penniless. So it again shows the paradox. Here's this great story of valor and of courage on the part of this soldier, and ultimately he comes back to a nation that doesn't honor that sacrifice.
We tend to think we all know American history so well that the story of the Harlem Hellfighters should be one of the first stories told. It wasn't about killing other people, it was about being Americans and serving their country well. That was the inclination of the Harlem Hellfighters.
When you are African American in 1917, democracy is armor. Democracy is a weapon. And to fight for a war to make the world safe for democracy was something more than just some ethereal crusade for the Hellfighters. It had concrete results. They were fighting for the rights to be a citizen of the country that they were born in.
First established in 1916 as the 15th New York National Guard Infantry Regiment, the U.S. Army's 369th Infantry Regiment, widely known as the Harlem Hellfighters, emerged as the most prominent African-American military unit during World War I. Initially manned by black enlisted soldiers guided by a mix of black and white officers, this regiment was federalized in 1917, preparing for overseas service during a time of pervasive racial inequality and hostility. By December of that year, the Hellfighters arrived in Brest, France, where they quickly became a part of the newly formed 93rd Division, Provisional, and continued their training, now under the experienced tutelage of French military instructors. In March 1918, the regiment was officially designated by the U.S. Army, undergoing reorganization and rearmament that followed the French military model. This restructuring prepared them for the combat operations that awaited on the front lines. That summer, as they integrated into the French 161st Division, the Hellfighters were ready to prove their mettle in combat, adopting the proud self-designation of Men of Bronze. Under the steadfast leadership of Colonel William Hayward, one of the original organizers of the regiment, these soldiers were fortunate compared to other African-American units of the time. Colonel Hayward not only commanded with respect and dignity, but also utilized his political influence to ensure that his troops received the support they needed. This stood in contrast to many white officers, who often held dismissive or disrespectful attitudes towards their black troops. In recognition of their bravery, over 100 members of the 369th received distinguished American and French awards, with Corporal Henry Johnson and Private Needham Roberts becoming the first two Americans to earn the prestigious French Croix de Guerre. Throughout their grueling 6-month tour in combat, potentially the longest among American units during the war, the 369th Infantry Regiment faced intense challenges. They suffered approximately 1,500 casualties while receiving only 900 replacements, resulting in a strain on their unit cohesion and morale. Despite these hardships, their reputation flourished. The regiment claimed the honor of being the first to cross the Rhine into Germany and achieved significant victories at key battles such as Chateau Thierry and Belleau Wood, earning the nickname Hellfighters from their adversaries. However, the relentless pace of combat and the lack of a proper replacement system led to acute discipline issues as the losses among long-serving members mounted, complicating the integration of newer soldiers. As the armistice was declared in November, the 369th had shown immense courage and resilience, but they were also left exhausted and undermined by the myriad challenges they faced. In February 1919, after much effort by Colonel Hayward, and despite their tumultuous experiences, the 369th was celebrated with a grand parade upon their return home, successfully reintegrating into the National Guard. Their legacy continued into World War II, when they were restructured as the 369th Anti-Aircraft Artillery Regiment, serving bravely in Hawaii and various locations along the West Coast. Today, this storied lineage endures as the 369th Support Battalion of the New York Army National Guard, a testament to the indelible mark left by the Harlem Hellfighters on military history and race relations in America. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please like, share, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And be sure to tell a friend to tell a friend. Sending love to each one of you. Feel free to leave a comment and share your thoughts on the topic.